Is imagination simply contained in the mind? Or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow.
His myth has endured for years.
You say his name 5 times, he's supposed to come.
You guys don't really believe that, do you?
His name has become legend.
What did you see that night?
He has always been a part of us.
Ray's body was torn apart by something powerful.
Now, he is only a whisper away.
Candyman.
Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, rated R. Starts Friday at select theaters.
Welcome back to the Black Cat's Shadow. I'm your host Andy, podcasting from Kansas City, Missouri.
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave, coming at you from the heart of Texas.
So yeah, tonight guys, we are going to talk about Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh. Now you may ask yourself, hey, if you guys are going to talk about Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, why aren't you going to talk about the first Candyman? Well, I'll tell you, we already did. We talked about it on our friends' show, the Back in Time podcast, and the hosts are Kyle and JD, and they are joining us tonight to talk about Candyman, Farewell in the Flesh. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having us, and I guess to join the party, I'm podcasting from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
And JD here, very glad to be on your show, and I'm podcasting from your mom.
Yeah, so Kyle and JD, if people have never heard of Back in Time podcast, give our listeners a little feel for what they can expect when they tune in to hear the discussion on Candyman or any of your other episodes.
Yeah, you can expect, we put out 2 episodes every week. So we have a teaser trailer where we actually break down the original trailer for each movie. We'll have a different topic every week. And then we have a full-length episode, which you guys were part of, where we broke down Candyman scene by scene. It's a really deep dive into the movies that we love. And, for me last week, Candyman was the first time I've ever actually watched the movie. And it's definitely the first time I ever watched the sequel, which I just finished up about an hour ago. So yeah, I think this is a really good movie. If you haven't been into Candyman in the past, or maybe it's been a long time since you've watched it, I think this is a good movie to go back and relive again. Yeah,
so this episode we're going to talk about the sequel, the second movie in the franchise, Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, and we're going to see how it lines up with the original, see how well that they carried the story through, and kind of what changes they made to the mythology of Candyman and to just the character of Candyman. See if we're going to discuss if there was any big changes. So I'll just start it off here. How well do you guys think that this sequel picks up from the original?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because if you listen to our episode on the Back in Time podcast, I kind of poo-pooed the original a little bit. And after watching the sequel again, it sort of puts a new perspective on what I think that they were trying to accomplish in the original. And so watching the sequel sort of opened my eyes a little bit more to just how great of a movie the first one is. And I think that the sequel picks up in such a great way where it sort of tells the same story in a different place, in a different way, but reuses a lot of the same elements. So it's a very familiar story to me. Like I responded positively to this, and it made me kind of like the first one even more.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what JD's saying, I agree. I think the second film definitely has its flaws. I don't think it's a bad movie by any stretch, but they did, in my opinion, rush things a little bit, where I think in the first one they really allow things to marinate, and in this one they're quick to jump the gun.
And I will piggyback off of both of these guys and totally disagree and say that watching Candyman Farewell to the Flesh shows me how much I didn't really care for the first one. Because I love this sequel.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to the sequel at all. I just, for me, I appreciated the slow burn of the original. And, I think that this is a more of a traditional, true to form slasher movie. And I really do think that they did a great job. And I've got really not much negativity to throw out at it.
I'm going to jump in your DeLorean, go back in time, and sit next to you in the stall and poo-poo on the original with you.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like this movie too. Probably not as much as the first one, but I thought that this one was well done. And going into this movie, I was thinking about, okay, how are they going to carry on the storyline? Where is this going to pick up if it does at all? I was kind of wondering if it was just going to be like a new Candyman movie that kind of ignored the first one. And I was hoping that would pick up, and I was very happy to see Professor Purcell at the very beginning explaining, the origins of Candyman, and he even referenced the first movie with like Helen's case where she went on a murder spree, and he just basically said that she was inspired by the Candyman myth to commit her own murders. So they did nod back to the first movie. So I was glad to see that. Like, I don't know, I really wanted to see some continuity between the two movies. So in the first movie, Candyman is in Chicago, and in this movie takes place in New Orleans, or Nolans, how they say it in the movie. So I was wondering why is he in New Orleans now? I think, we can get into that a little bit later or whatever, but I think that they did kind of flesh it out to where there's a reason why he's in New Orleans. So I like that, but they did change some things though.
Let's talk about the opening of the movie, because you don't get the actual opening title till almost 8 minutes into the film. There's the whole setup, and I want to know what you guys think about it, because my personal take on it was I thought it was an awesome way to kick off the film.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I do think the opening 6 to 8 minutes of the movie are very strong. I love the professor, that he's back. He's still very stuffy. Oh, Candyman. The soundtrack is just as good as the original. And the big difference here between the two is, I don't know, Candyman didn't show up in the original until 30, 40 minutes in? And then already within the first 6 minutes, he's on screen and he's slicing and dicing. So, yeah, I think it's a good way to, if you're going to do a slow burn in the original, this one starts off with a bang. I think it's a good start.
Well, a comparison that I want to make too is I love what you're saying, and you're 100% right. Like, Candyman's much more a part of this movie than he was in the original. And I want to compare that to the last time we all got together and we did the Nightmare on Elm Street series, because I felt like it was the exact same thing where they rushed the sequel out, but then you got a whole bunch more Freddy Krueger in the sequel than you did the original. Not to mention, if you look at the screenplay, the guy who wrote it, his last name was Krueger. Just saying.
Mr. Tie-In.
Yeah, I did like the beginning. It was, they opened it with a bang. I like that. It's kind of the more traditional route to go. Open the movie with a murder to start off with. So it leads you to believe that this is going to be like floor to ceiling, like slasher movie, and it's not quite that. I think definitely in the middle it slows down quite a bit. But there's definitely more of a body count in this movie. I will say that. Definitely, especially like in the last, 30 minutes, the bodies definitely start piling up.
It reminds me a lot of what they said in Scream 2, where they're talking about definitions of a sequel. Because you're right, the body count's bigger, but then I think he says in the movie the death scenes are much more elaborate, and you get that a lot in this movie. And I think maybe another reason why I like it so much is, I'm not a blood and gore need kind of guy. Like, I can watch a movie without it, but certain movies do need it, and I think that really helped improve the Candyman legend, because even though Tony Todd as a figure is very menacing, he doesn't have to do much and he already feels well invested. just seeing them in this movie, and you can tell I didn't do the research, but I would assume they had a bigger budget to do this one, as most sequels tend to do. And I felt like they were able to use it kind of in the right ways. And we'll get into some of the effects later, but even just the beginning, the blood splaying everywhere, just people getting slayed up. I thought it was just an awesome note to what sequels do whenever they're actually good sequels. But I did have one thing I was going to talk about that I did catch, because you're right, there are flaws in the movie, but what about the professor doing the Candyman thing in the reflection of the book? Didn't it have to be a mirror? Wasn't that the whole thing?
That's what I thought. That part kind of confused me a little bit.
I remember it being the mirror, and other urban legends play off the same fact that it's the mirror, and the mirror being a leak into another universe, plays that part.
Sure, and then he doesn't even get it until he's in the bathroom standing in front of a mirror again. So I was trying not to knock on it, but I was like, how did that kind of work out?
Well, they definitely took some liberties with the mythology in this one. They kind of strayed from how they laid it out in the first movie. Definitely, with in this movie they say that Daniel Robitaille, he was born and died in New Orleans, and they even show his grave in this movie, and so it definitely is different than the first movie, because in the first one he is like lynched in Cabrini Green in Chicago, and is like burned, and his ashes are spread over Cabrini Green, and that's why he's there. But now in this one, everything takes place in New Orleans, and so they kind of like change that. And I don't know, I guess they need, for whatever reason they wanted to film in New Orleans, I guess, so they just changed the story to fit around that. But I did like the idea, the professor was talking about how the urban legend of the Candyman takes root in kind of impoverished areas, more urban areas. So he said that's why it took root in New Orleans as well as Chicago. So I like that kind of connection there. Did you guys like the expansion of the mythology in this movie? Did you guys like the idea of like the soul mirror? And we haven't really mentioned that yet, but what do you guys think about that?
So I'll say, like, I do appreciate what they did to establish that, advanced social commentary that they're trying to establish by moving it from Chicago to Nolans. I think that, to me, that sort of hurt the story a little bit, and it sort of cheapened the mythology, but at the same time it made it more strong and vibrant. So I did like seeing Candyman in a new location, and I know that there's further Candyman films, and I'm certain that there will be more coming down the pipeline. It's creepy to think that Candyman could be anywhere.
I'll jump in with my personal take. Is I 100% agree with JD, and I love this new setting. I look back at the original Candyman, and a lot of us were on the same page. We enjoyed the movie, but at times we were kind of bored with some of it. And I know some of us now have different opinions watching this one. But for me, I was reminded, because I'll admit it, I definitely have nostalgia going on. I watched this one more than the original, so much more in the early 90s. But this movie, I just really like the setting. I really like the cast a lot more. I feel like all the kids in here, they're very believable. The classroom setting, I love the fact that, she's a good teacher, and one of the kids' dad is a priest, and just so much stuff ties together. And I know they did take some typical kind of cheap cuts in the film, but there's just so much to the backstory that you get in this movie and the history of Candyman that stayed so strong for me. And getting to rewatch it again today for this podcast, I was looking at it and I was like, I remember I used to watch this movie all the time, but I haven't seen it in at least 10, 15 years. And my wife was even hearing me get excited from the other room. And I told her, like, I can't believe how much I still love this movie. So when I look at the two settings of, Chicago versus New Orleans, I prefer this version.
And I just want to jump in and add to what you're saying as a cool little side note. The fact that Adam Green, with what he did in Hatchet that takes place in New Orleans, and then bringing Tony Todd back into that fold is kind of a cool little tie-in.
That totally crossed my mind earlier when you were talking about it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the like I was wondering why they moved to New Orleans, and I was trying to, they did kind of explain it, but I do appreciate the setting because, especially how it's taking place around the time of Mardi Gras. I think just that setting of the, everybody's wearing costumes. It's almost like a Halloween type setting. It's very, I don't know. It gives it a very surreal quality, the movie, and so I think that adds to the overall kind of creepiness to the story. But yeah, I do like the setting, even though it's not the same as in the first one. I do appreciate the setting.
I was just going to add, I haven't seen the third Candyman, but that focuses on the Day of the Dead, so they reuse that sort of theme, correct?
Yep.
Cool.
Hey, Kyle, what did you think of our leading lady in this movie?
I really like Annie. She's best known for being the mom on the show The OC, but I think she's great in this. And I really like the scene where she goes to visit the old apartment, and we get to see that awesome mural on the wall. It's not quite as good as its predecessor, but I thought that was a really good scene. But she's ballsy, and we can talk more about it at the ending and his demise in this movie. But yeah, I really like Annie, and I like Kelly Rowan as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I've never seen the OC, but when I looked her up.
Unfortunately.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I looked her up because I was like, man, I wonder what else she's done. And I noticed, even looking at her on Twitter, she's got tons and tons of followers. And I was like, oh, people know who she is. Dang it. I was hoping, let's get her on the podcast or something. But that's good. I mean, the OC totally makes sense. That would be why she's popular. But her role in this movie is equally as strong as Virginia Madsen. Like, I know I can get bashed for that because Virginia Madsen is a fantastic actress, and she's great in the first movie, but just things about her character just kind of bugged me. And when I watch this one, she's a lot more of an innocent female, but then her character develops and she becomes that strong person when she kind of is able to identify with who she is and what she becomes in there. And I got to say that's just something I really liked with the story, was just seeing, she's the good teacher and she cares about the kids and the kids care about her, and there's a close bond, and she's surrounded by all these other evil entities. I mean, because you have a detective in here who is you have her brother who's crazy as a loon, and you have all these surrounding, you have Candyman, you have the environment itself, all these things that are constantly hovering over her. There's a past with her father, where he was murdered just like everybody else, and so much haunts her. But then throughout the course of the movie, even her mom in this movie is something I can't even say right now, but I even wrote down some things about the mom we can talk about. But I just love how she becomes a breakout character, and she saves those kids, takes them under her wing, and she just faces Candyman face to face and takes him down.
Hey, can we talk about the brother real quick?
Let's do it. Let's talk about Ethan.
So Ethan is great in this, but just because I love to do this to JD on our podcast. Hey JD, what's your favorite William O'Leary TV show, and why is it his arc on Home Improvement?
Marty.
Oh shit, was that Marty Taylor?
Yes.
Oh, how did I miss that? Oh, dude, I love Marty. He's such a creepy character in that show.
That's awesome.
That's all I had. I had to pull that out.
Oh, that's perfect.
I appreciate that, Kyle. You tend to put me in a checkmate position. Congrats once again. Go put on your nice Air Jordan shoes and jump out of a helicopter, whatever the hell you people do.
Don't jump out of a helicopter. Yeah, I'm with you. I knew right away, and that's something I remembered. I'm like, oh, it's Marty from Home Improvement. That's so cool. But I gotta say, he's much better in Home Improvement than he is in this film.
Yeah, he's a little cornball, but
yeah, he's great as a comedian. But in having to do some of the serious roles in here, it was a little tough for me. So, Andy, what did you think about Ethan as far as the character is concerned?
Oh, I mean, I think the acting was fine. Yeah, I didn't mind him as a character. It seems like you see this a lot in movies, though. Like these, people will try to take the fall for something they didn't do to protect the rest of their family, and I don't know if it's a cliche or whatever, but it does kind of set up an interesting mysteries. Like, and it is a little predictable. I think you kind of see where this is going pretty early on in the movie. But yeah, he was okay. I don't know if he was really my favorite character, but I really didn't like that detective. Like you mentioned, he was just like, he was a jerk. He was just like ready to like nail him to the wall, like right there, with no evidence or no trial or anything.
Yeah, I remember when he first showed up on screen, I was like, is that Angel? Is that David Boreanaz? Because he had that similar facial structure, but no, judged by his acting, it definitely was not. But I'll tell you one thing that threw me was, the character of Ethan in the beginning started out, you didn't know, you just knew he was a guy hanging out in the back of the room. And then he shows up to the professor and he wants his book signed. And he's like, oh, you're a little shy, huh? And then you find out, no, there's something with his name. And there's a little bit of tension. And then the professor goes to a bar after getting death threats. But then I just felt the attack by Ethan was so out of character. I'm like, I don't see him raging like that and running to a bar and starting a fight. But then as the plot kind of thickens and goes on, that's when you start to realize a lot of the same things are happening to Ethan that happened to Helen in the original, where, you're always in the wrong place, wrong time. Candyman's in and out and you're covered in blood.
I agree with Dave completely. I think his actions are completely out of character for that scene.
Yeah, I guess it surprised me too that he would just like, because the professor went to the bar, ordered a drink, and like all of a sudden the brother was there like attacking him. That surprised me. You could kind of see the writing on the wall. When he said Candyman 5 times, and I was like, okay, he's probably going to be our first victim. But yeah, I definitely didn't expect the brother to attack him there in the bar in front of everybody.
One character that I want to bring up, assuming that we all say Candyman's our favorite character, the next in line for me was Paul, Annie's husband. I love that guy. I thought he was awesome. What did you guys think of Chef Paul?
Can we talk about another creepy line?
Go for it.
In Paul's the perfect part. So in the original, we've got, I hear you're looking for Candyman, bitch. But in this one, it's another strange line. He comes up, he's like, are you ready for dessert? And she looks back and she's like, again? So I don't know. They had just made love in the other scene, so for some context. So I don't know if he means round 2 or he really just wants dessert and they're going to eat dessert for the second time. I don't know.
Well, I think they answered that question because the next scene, they just finished up a shower.
Yeah, but they could have been eating carrot cake in the shower.
That's what I was thinking. He's a chef. They had to be actual dessert.
Yeah, but they held each other and looked into each other's eyes.
Yeah, but you can do that over carrot cake. Guys, are you not listening to me?
JD, do you like carrot cake?
Dude, I love carrot cake. Thank you for asking.
Too. I think carrot cake and red velvet cake go hand in hand.
Yeah, they're very underrated.
Just want you guys to know, JD and I are going to write a new Candyman sequel, and there will be carrot cake.
Oh, it's a big part of it. Actually, Candyman candyizes carrot cake into a candy and stops killing people.
We could call him Carrot Man.
Candyman carrot cake?
It'll be like that Celery Man skit on Tim and Eric. Somebody out there's going to laugh at that, I promise you.
What did you guys think of Octavia, Annie's mom, who I wrote down as middle-aged drunk biatch?
Well, it's the legendary Veronica Cartwright, from the Alien movie, among other things. I mean, yeah, she was fine as her character. She portrayed that role you just described pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was written that the audience really hate her, then mission accomplished.
I do want to go back to Paul really quickly, though.
Yeah.
Annie's boyfriend or husband, whatever he was. I guess he was her husband. I recognized him because he was in an episode of The X-Files. So that's where I recognized him from.
Well, I recognized him from Star Trek Next Generation.
Okay.
I recognized him because he was behind me in McDonald's today. His career's had a bit of a slide, but I mean, he had a couple bucks on him.
Behind you or behind the counter?
Yeah, he was flipping burgers.
Oh, that's not what I heard.
And then I was like, are you ready for round 2?
What did you guys think of Candyman in this movie? Because he looks a little different from the way he looked in the original, and I liked it because what I noticed was in the original, he was that phantom being, right? In this one, he came off more like a vengeful ghost, and not only was he trying to be more seductive with Annie than I think he did Helen, but he was a lot more threatening, in my opinion.
I have a real problem with that statement because here's the thing. He's in Cabrini Green and he's dressed to the nines. We go to the Narlands and he dumbs down his outfits. Like, I mean, he should have had like a fedora on. I don't understand why he changed.
Well, he
should have been more outlandish.
Somebody back us up. What do you guys got?
I honestly didn't really see a whole lot of difference between the two movies and how Tony Todd portrayed Candyman. Obviously he does a lot more stuff. He does a lot more killing and interacting with people in this movie, but I don't know. To me, he seemed pretty much the same. I don't know.
No, I thought that, and the theme and the vibe and a lot of the subtext in this movie, and to your point of how he's dressed and how he portrays himself, is much more, towards a definitive classic horror movie, slasher movie, where I feel like that plays a massive part in this, where we get away from that horror drama, and now we're more traditional in the Candyman's just here to mess people up and eat carrot cake. Yeah.
I mean, and I'm down with that. There's even the sequence where he's standing behind Annie and he spins her around without touching her. It was so suave looking, but it gave you that feeling that he can, like, we already know he can do whatever he wants to do. But I mean, the guy just, I don't know. I guess maybe I felt like he was more invested, or he was just really happy to be back as Candyman. Maybe.
I don't know. It sounds like you're almost describing Dracula.
Oh yeah.
Well, maybe he is Dracula.
He's the Nolan's Dracula.
I would totally be cool with a Tony Todd Dracula. What did you guys think of some of the kids that we have in here? Did you guys like Matthew? Did you recognize Matthew by chance?
Oh, I'll take that one. I recognized him right away as Walter from Camp Nowhere.
Yeah, you did.
And he's moved on from the braces. Good for him. But he has not aged in 5 years. So I would love to see an up-to-date photo of Joshua Gilbert Mayweather to see what he looks like today. But he had a short career in Hollywood, but he made a couple memorable movies. I mean, Camp Nowhere, the sequel to this, and then he did Problem Child 3, I want to say, and then a couple TV shows, and then out the door. So, yeah, but it was fun seeing him here, and I recognized him within seconds.
And he had his clothes on. There was no somebody stealing his swim trunks.
He's a little scoundrel in Camp Nowhere. You can't sleep on him there.
Yeah, he did a great job. I liked him as the leading kid in this movie. He was believable. You know, he has nightmares. He's an artist in here. And he's the only one in the classroom that believes in Candyman. And you always got to have that, that character in every situation. And I just felt like it worked because you also had a couple other guys in the classroom who didn't believe it. And the whole time they're always fighting each other. They're causing friction in the classroom. And it causes the teacher to just prove to everybody Candyman's not real. And then she goes right in the mirror and says Candyman 5 times. But then the funny thing happens is Candyman doesn't show up. Did you guys think that was weird at all, that he didn't just pop right up, that he can just show up when he wants to?
Well, he does show up in the form of a bee. You go over to the window and he's buzzing on the windowsill.
Now, is that Candyman or was that just a coincidence, or maybe he was around the corner?
I thought that was him.
Oh, I didn't even.
Maybe I missed it, or
it seemed like a little bit of foreshadowing for sure. I mean, Candyman's a strategic son of a gun.
You think he can manifest himself into a being? Because I've never seen him do that anywhere else.
Well, I think just the bee, the bees, like seeing the bees is kind of like heralding his approach or something like that. I don't know.
Okay, right on.
Maybe he's like Ant-Man and he can control that.
Oh.
Because, bees are always around him, it seems like. Later on here, whenever Paul gets killed, which was a pretty cool death scene, I thought.
Sad part.
Yeah, it's Yeah, it is kind of because you do get to you do get to like Paul and Annie, as they kind of are developed throughout the movie up to this point. But I really liked. I thought that was cool where they ripped open Candyman's face and the bees started coming out. I thought that was cool. That was a cool effect.
Yeah, that was the reference I had for the way the effects get better. Is not only just Paul being completely gutted from growing to sternum, but just seeing the bees flying out of his face and the wound sealing back up. I'm like, oh, somebody spent some money here. What'd you guys think about that death scene back in time podcast? Did you like it or did you hate it?
I'll jump in on that one. I thought that scene was really good. I like the special effects with his face growing back. And then also worth noting, on our last episode, we talked about part of his contract, because these are real bees. They're baby bees that were born. I mean, it's within hours of when they go onto his face. Every time he gets stung by a bee, he gets a nice little paycheck. So here's to hoping that Tony Todd gets stung a few times.
I raise my glass. Hear, hear. What did you guys think about some of the dialogue of this? Because, Candyman usually always has something really cool that he says before he kills somebody or when he's trying to lure in his girl. And I picked up on so many outstanding references. Like there was the come with me and sing the song of misery. There was the, I am the whispers in the classroom and everything. What did you guys think about his dialogue?
Do you know how much of that is attributed to the original short story that this is based on? Because I know that what's Clive Barker, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very accomplished horror writer and has created many great things throughout his career. And I just would be curious to how much of that is included or based off of the original piece that the Candyman comes from. Because I agree with you, like it's fantastic that he's so eloquent, and that goes into the mythology of who he is and just how powerful he is and how seductive he can be. And I'm just uninformed to what comes from the source material.
I'll just pick up my phone. I'll call and ask him.
Oh,
hey,
fantastic!
Clive, JD wanted to know, how much of that was you.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what JD's saying, I think, and this is probably unrelated, but I think this is what helps or what makes Candyman different from like your average slasher killer. Like with Michael Myers, he kind of hunts people down. Next week on our podcast, we're going to be doing I Know What You Did Last Summer. He goes around with a slicker and a hook in his hand. But, Candyman, there's a lot more to him. He's very poetic. And he's also, very scary at the same time. So I think that's part of what I really like about his character.
Whoa. You guys are going to be doing I Know What You Did Last Summer?
You got it.
Yup.
Two
Awesome.
Hook movies? Oh, my goodness. I'm in heaven.
It's like back-to-back hooking. We're hookers.
You are hookers, and you know what? I'm totally hooked.
Yeah, Kyle, to piggyback on what you said about Candyman being the elegant villain, he's also very sympathetic. You in this movie, you really see the whole scene of him being lynched, and they talk about it some in the first movie, but they don't really show it to you. And in this movie, they actually acted out that scene, showed you that scene where he was lynched, and so I think that was really powerful, and it really makes Candyman sympathetic, and you see him in a different light maybe than some other horror movie icons, I guess.
I wanted to really emphasize the fact that he was a painter and a shoesmith, and that's why the love was unrequited. That was very important to me, and I got to even tell more of that in the second one, which is what we're here discussing. I wanted, I insisted that we do scenes of him in his former life. Now, there are a lot of fans that don't get that, but the ones that are intelligent do. It's a gothic love story at its core. This is a man that was involved with what it feels like when you have a love of your life, or it feels like the love of your life. Some people go from love to love, but in Helen and Daniel's case, it was the one and only. And to be punished for passionate love is unforgivable.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on that too. That they pull the old pro wrestling 101 trick here, and they turn him babyface, and they literally saw off his hand. And of course, now we can't go, oh, now he's this scary guy. Now we're going, poor Candyman. That guy can't cut a break.
Yeah, the whole time I was like, not his right hand. Poor Candyman.
So through the course of the movie, where the question is, what connection is there between Annie's family and Candyman? And I think there's some hints throughout the movie, and it, to me, it's a little predictable. Was the whole twist that they were related, was that predictable to you guys, or was that like a surprise?
Surprised the crap out of me. I mean, they clearly don't look alike.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that. It's kind of like the Lost World, where all of a sudden Jeff Goldblum's son is a completely different race for no reason at all. Yeah, I mean, it definitely caught me by surprise, being my first time watching it, and I thought it was a nice twist, to be honest.
And you can catch The Lost World in the Back in Time archives.
Thank you for the plug.
There it is. Question for you guys. Were there any scenes in this movie that popped up that you just were scratching your head about? Because I had to write down 2 scenes that I was like, WTF, what is going on? And I'll use one right away. There's a guy passed out face down on the concrete, and in his back it says, I'm drunk and stupid. Please let me sleep.
Well, that's just Nolans.
I was thinking, what a great cameo. Was that the director? That would have been awesome.
I don't know. I had the same experience when I was in New Orleans in February, so I can't say too much.
Did they
It's
let
true.
you sleep?
He called me.
No, they let me sleep. I did not get robbed.
Not even of your pride?
Well, I'm telling the story.
There it is. What about the kids that were poking the dead cat?
Oh yeah.
I thought that was a dog. It was a cat?
Yeah,
It
I
was
think it was
dead.
a cat. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a big cat.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was creepy. It did remind me a little bit of the original, where Candyman cuts the head off the family dog. So I like that they go back to mutilating animals in the sequel. Well, not really, but
It's such a weird sentence to say.
And you were just so nice about Dorothy and Toto,
the Wizard of Oz episode. That's going to be a good one on your podcast. I can't wait. Yeah, one scene that I was scratching my head about, and this is probably going to catch me some hate here, but it's the last scene with Candyman. I did not like the ending at all. I don't like the Mr. Freeze gimmick, where he freezes up and just falls apart. I think the graphics are, dare I say, terrible. And I just did not like it at all. I mean, the first movie is such an awesome scene where he literally burns to death in front of the entire town of Cabrini Green. And here, he freezes up and falls apart like a puzzle.
No, he turns into a mirror and then he shatters.
Yeah.
The effects
Either
were
way,
just that good.
I was like, oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to the whole, this magic mirror is like the source of his power, or, that his like soul was trapped in the mirror when he died. I wasn't too crazy about that. I liked it better in the first one, where his power was when people believed in him, then he was more powerful. It's kind of like Freddy Krueger, I guess. But yeah, in this one, they have this like magic mirror, this soul mirror or whatever. And yeah, so I wasn't into that as much. But as far as like the shattering scene at the end there, I didn't mind. I thought it was kind of cool. I think considering maybe the time, I don't know, like, considering the time it was made, I guess maybe I forgive it.
I think what you're saying is that it's forgivable effects for the sake of the story. Is that right?
I refuse to give it a pass. I stand firm.
JD, are you going to be a deal breaker for us?
It's just so on par with other movies that came out in this mid 90s range, like what we have, like The Prophecy and Wishmaster and
Tony Todd reference.
There we go. I mean, I can forgive it because they only had so much available to create something compelling, and they did something bold, and I think their intentions were good. I think that they wanted something that plays into the mythology of the story. And while Kyle hates it, I do kind of appreciate it.
Woohoo!
I guess we all get trophies. Isn't this nice?
Everyone but you, Kyle, go home.
Okay.
Hey, Kyle, on your way home, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch, in the first movie, he's always like, be my victim. But in this movie, it was be my witness. Did y'all catch that he switched it up?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's good writing. I like that part of it. Because, he can't always just say be my victim in every single film. So I think you got to change up his phrasing a little bit, especially if you're going to switch locations and he's going to evolve as a character. So, yeah, I did not have a problem with that.
Hey, Andy, I know how much you're into mythology and everything like that and, folklore and whatnot. So I know parts of this movie really did have to excite you. But I got to say, something called out to me, and I was wondering, what did you think of the snow cone guy?
Oh,
who
yeah.
had the insane, awesome, hip layout behind his snow cone store.
Yeah, no, that was cool. He was like, I don't know what he was like some kind of like, I don't know if he was like a voodoo guy or just some kind of herbalist or whatever. But yeah, that was cool. I mean, he had the whole little setup, he had the they weren't really false doors. They were like it was like a closet, but he opened it up and there was like these secret panels in the back that you walk through. I thought that was really cool.
It would have totally made for an awesome video store. Just like, come in my basement and then boom, VHS wall.
Oh, yeah. And his death was kind of cool, too. Like the bee sting effect, his face is all like swollen up and that wasn't bad.
Well, yeah, and then he got thrown through the wall and his head was sticking out the wall.
Yeah. Now, there was one scene talking about effects. So at the very end again, when Annie and is it Matthew, the kid, they're crawling away from the shack, like the slave shacks, and the shack is being like carried away by the floodwaters, and you can clearly see so the shack is in the background, like kind of swirling around as they're climbing away from it. You can clearly see the shack is like this miniature, just kind of swirling around in water. So I thought that wasn't the greatest effect there.
I'll add that scene was a little surreal, especially knowing what would come about a decade later with Hurricane Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
So when the flooding started, I immediately kind of went to that, and I was just like, of course. So yeah, it's an interesting tie-in looking back at it.
Now I was wondering, so at the end of the movie, after the demise of Candyman, everybody's happy, I guess. It fast forwards at least probably like, I don't know, 5 years or so, because Annie's kid is now
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, Annie's kid is now a little girl, and but I don't know. It's like, what happened with her legally? Because the police were chasing after her, and so I didn't know.
I think all that fell apart whenever that female detective saw the surveillance video, and they knew that there was some sort of supernatural entity, that killed the detective, and that it wasn't Ethan or her family. I think she got pretty much off the hook with that. Off the hook. You guys hear that? Did it?
Heyo. It's kind of like the in the movie Frailty, but in reverse.
Yeah. Good movie. So, but what did you think of that as far as his ending is concerned, Andy? Like, I'm sure you're leading up to it, but how did you like the way the movie actually ends?
Oh man, I thought for sure there was going to be some kind of stinger. I was a little disappointed, like Candyman didn't pop up or something at the very end, but just with the way this movie was structured, it was kind of structured more as like a traditional slasher. So I thought for sure there's going to be something like that at the end.
Well, see, I'm opposite, which is really cool. I'm glad you feel that way because I was relieved that they didn't take the cheapskate route, that there wasn't like Candyman popping up, gotcha, or something, some sort of Freddy Krueger-ish type ending. So, Kyle, JD, so that's 1-1. Where do you guys stand with the way the movie actually ends?
I don't know. I'm sort of, anytime that they do that sort of coda outro, you kind of cringe, but you do expect it. So I'm sort of torn on my vote, but I'm going to vote and say that I kind of wish that they just did it, because at this point that there's going to be a third one, and there was a third one. So why not just tease it?
Okay. Kyle, it's up to you.
I guess we're going back to even because I was totally okay with him not coming back on. I like that she comes back on and kind of like hushes the daughter and is like, "Hey, easy now."
Yeah, don't say it 5 times.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the third movie yet. I have no idea where it takes place, but please tell me it doesn't take place in like Compton.
It doesn't.
Do they move away from like the ghetto areas?
It's not Leprechaun.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I actually do own that movie. So maybe we'll reunite and tackle 3 sometime in the future.
Oh, we really should.
We've come this far.
Yes,
know,
we
yeah.
have.
So Andy, I'll hand it back over to you, man.
So, after this discussion about the movie, I want to get everybody's opinion. Is there, and I guess it's pretty cut and dry, but I guess I just kind of want to get like a summary. Like, is this movie worth seeing if you've already seen the first movie? Does this movie have something to offer that to the viewer? Like, how sequels traditionally do. They make the part 2 is like comes back bigger and better. So would you guys say this is something that fans of the first one should go out and see?
I'll go first. Yeah, I would definitely say that this is a movie that's worth seeing. If you saw the original Candyman movie, and whether you liked it or hated it, this film is a good evolution of both the character, the mythology, and the story overall. And it does a great job of updating a lot of what was great about the first movie and speeding up a lot about what was boring about the first movie, and creating a pretty good packaged horror slasher movie. So it's definitely worth seeing where Candyman goes in part 2.
Yeah, I think first off, maybe stay away from Rotten Tomatoes or going off of the critic response, which was much worse for the sequel. I think this is a movie that you continue to follow the storyline of Candyman. It's definitely worth seeing. Is it as good as the first movie? I don't think it is by any stretch, but I think it's a worthy addition to the Candyman canon.
Awesome. And I'll jump in and say I highly recommend it because I feel like, kind of like JD said, if you like the first one and you just want to see more Candyman, you get more Candyman. But if you watch the first one and you wish you had more Candyman, then you'll like the second one because you get a lot more Candyman. And yeah, don't worry about reviews. Like Kyle said, just watch it for yourself. And I'll leave you with this. It's better than part 3.
Yeah. For me, I definitely liked the first one a little bit better. But that's not to say that this wasn't a good movie. I definitely enjoyed Candyman for World of the Flesh, and I definitely recommend it for all the horror people out there. If you're into horror movies, like you don't even really need to see the first one if you don't want to. This one is, I feel like this one is more. I feel like mainstream like horror fans are probably gonna like this one a little bit better, just because there's more action in this one. So anyway, that's just my opinion, but
that's a good point.
It's more palatable, I guess, a little bit for like the general horror audience. But anyway, I definitely think it's worth a watch. You can actually see it for free on Tubi TV. You just have to watch a few ads here and there, but it's not too bad.
Well, thanks for telling me now, Andy.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Dang it.
So yeah, so I just want to thank Kyle and JD for jumping on here with us and talking about the Candyman sequel. It's been a lot of fun having them on our show, and we definitely look forward to having them come back again real soon.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for having us on. You can follow us on social media. We're at Back in Time Pod. You can subscribe to our channel, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. We've got I Know What You Did Last Summer coming out next week. Of course, we've got the crossover with Black Cat Shadow where we do part 1 of Candyman. And then 2 weeks from now, it's Back to the Future week on Back in Time Pod. And we've got a bunch of stuff coming down the pipeline for you guys. So if you're a fan of that movie, you definitely want to tune in. We've got a really cool interview with the author of Where We're Going, We Don't Need Roads. And it's going to be a fun episode.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely stay tuned for that, guys. And Yeah, as for us, you can catch us on social media on Twitter. We're at Black Cat Podcast, and also on Facebook and Horror Amino as well. And you can always send us an email at blackcatpodcast@gmail.com. Dave, where can people keep up with what you're doing?
Yep, on Twitter, Phantom Dark Dave, usually attached to Black Cat Shadow as well. So if you want to reach out to me, you can do it either way on Twitter. And yeah, I got the Days Pop Culture podcast where Andy frequently comes on and talks with me. Kyle's been on a few times, and I'm probably going to slide JD some carrot cake pretty soon and get him on there too.
Woo woo.
All right, so remember, guys, to take a closer look at the world around you, and you may just find that it is stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat Shadow.